2020-21 was a golden era for the hackers around the globe. Every organization had to take all the applications, at least most of the applications and servers, over to the internet in order to collaborate with the employees and external users. The external users included partners, vendors, suppliers, and other entities working closely with the organization. In this process, many CISOs and CIOs had to choose a mechanism in which we have to establish seamless and secure access for each of the resources, and they didn't have much time in hand, and most of them ended up consuming VPN technology for this mechanism in order to provide a remote access connectivity to the assets. Let's look at some of the scenarios that has happened in the same era, 2020-21. Many of the companies have got hacked at their perimeter, which was at the VPN layer, and once gotten, we know that VPN networks disclose much more than what they should actually get access to, because of which they could further travel and get into other devices. And in many of the cases, hackers were able to even get into the build servers and manipulate the content out there. Earlier days, we had users, devices, applications and servers, all of them sitting in a closed perimeter. At that time, it was not an easy job for an external user or a hacker to understand the presence of this network or later try to sneak in. But as the time goes by, the users and their devices has come out of the organization and started accessing these resources remotely. Whereas applications and servers also has started spreading out to the cloud environments and data center environment, because of which the complexity of the whole IT environment and hence the security has become very complex. We started seeing good amount of insider attacks happening from internal and external users, and we also started seeing so many incidents where external hackers are trying to sneak in to any of these applications that are exposed, the user devices that are exposed, and even to do the man in the middle of the traffic that is happening between them. These are some of the major vulnerabilities that are exposed in the VPN network in the recent past. This is a growing list, and we all know most of the VPN vendors today have disclosed their well-known vulnerabilities, and unfortunately we have the publicly available source code which can be readily consumed by any of the user without having much knowledge around the technology out here. We will definitely go through some of the scenarios, how we can consume some of those codes and later exploit into a VPN network. There is a belief we all had at one point of time, and many of us still have: can I patch and make sure my infrastructure is safe, my devices are safe? The answer to that would be no, because we don't have patches available for all the vulnerabilities today. Why? Because the original manufacturers of the software elements and hardware elements are not aware of all the vulnerabilities that are present with them today. Why does that happen? Because of two main reasons according to me. One, there are private organizations which can shell out good amount of money in order to purchase vulnerabilities across software platforms and across various elements like VPN. This is one. And second issue out there, or second scenario out there, is the dark web. We all know internet comprises of three main areas: surface web, deep web and dark web. Surface web is the area where we browse and read the content without any authentication, and deep web is the area where we access things like bank websites with our authentication mechanism. And there is one more area in the internet, it's called dark web, where most of the illegal activities and government based secret activities are happening today. In this area, we are seeing not only drug trafficking kind of operations, we are also seeing the sales of vulnerabilities, and there are forums out there which discusses the well-known vulnerabilities which are secret, which are kept with them, and they are ready to sell you the exploits, the readily usable, consumable exploit for a price. When we have places like that, why should a security researcher sell his finding or his security bug for a free of cost at time or for a smaller amount of price? This system is actually making sure that these vulnerabilities are not reaching OEMs, and hence we do not have patches for all of them today with us. Let me take you through some of the demos. I'll show you 4 demos today. The first 2 would be how to do 2 kinds of attack on a VPN, and the last 2 would be what to do after getting into a VPN network. In the first 2 attacks that I'm doing in a VPN networks, I will cover how to do a DOS attack on a VPN network, and how to enter a VPN network as one node without anyone getting to know about it. The DOS attack means denial of service attack, where we will make sure that the VPN server no more respond to any incoming requests that are happening. Let's take a look at that. Here I have two machines in the split screen. On the right side, I have a VPN server listening for the connections that are coming in. I have not started the server, I am going to start that. On the left side, I have Ubuntu machine from which I am going to send a malicious request. When this request reaches the OpenVPN server, the OpenVPN server assume this is an incoming access request, try to open it up, and it will not be able to read the content and it crashes. What happens when an OpenVPN server crashes? It stops responding to any other connection request as well. And at this point, the organization is getting completely disconnected from the outer world. Any of the employees or external users are no more able to connect to the application or to the perimeter at that point onwards. Let's take a look at that. Here, the 1.128 is the OpenVPN server, and 192.168.1.12 is the machine from which we are going to send the malicious request. OpenVPN server has started off and it is listening for the incoming connections. Let's send the request. Here we are entering the remote remote IP address 192.168.1.128, and we have to choose the OpenVPN port where the OpenVPN is listening so that we can send the malicious request to that particular port number. Okay, we may ask a question, how do we know which port OpenVPN is listening in? And in most of the cases, OpenVPN choose the port 1194 because that's the default port where OpenVPN will be installed. But at the same time, maybe there are cases where a admin choose to install basically configure OpenVPN over any other port number. Even in those cases, for a remote hacker, it is very easy to identify on which port the VPN server is listening. How to do that? There are tools like Nmap which can search, which can probe every 65535 ports and identify which port is holding the OpenVPN connectivity. And at times it can also tell you which is the kind of VPN that you are consuming and what is the version of VPN you are consuming, so that we can look for the vulnerabilities based on that. Yeah, it is not advised to showcase your version on the banner, but some of the VPN servers do the same way. Okay, let's continue with the demo. We are sending the request. This is the way we have constructed the packets, and we are going to shoot it to the OpenVPN server. Yes. As soon as the request was reached at the OpenVPN server, it has got disconnected. Basically, it has showcased a fatal error on the screen and got disconnected, after which the server is no more listening for any new connections, like I just said earlier. So this is one of the main issues with exposing the endpoints of the organization out in the internet. Like I said, even today we don't know all the vulnerabilities that are present across the VPN endpoints. Then why should we disclose it to outer world and look for a vulnerability to hit us? That is where zero trust kind of technologies have helped organizations to hide it. I'll soon take you there. Now let's look at another demo where we are trying to infiltrate into a network and become one among them. In other words, your device, maybe a laptop, is going to join a VPN network without anybody else being aware of it. I'm going to make use of one of the well-known vendors login page. I've installed the VPN software again in one of the VM inside the same laptop that I'm presenting, and another VM in the same network, in the same local network, is going to get into the VLAN that has been created inside here. Right, let's take a look at that. I'm trying the username guest and a random password just to see how it is configured, and we are getting a permission denied error. Why? We really don't know the username and password. Now let's try to create a user guest and create a password for us, making use of one of the vulnerabilities present in the VPN. Yeah, how is it made possible? That was a bug present in the vendor which helped us to do it. Okay, now we may ask a question. Yeah, you know how to get into a particular vendor's VPN network, but how can we identify which are the vendors or companies consuming this particular vendor's VPN network, and what are the URLs they are consuming? Because without knowing the URL endpoints that are exposed by this organization, there's no way you can get inside, right? But unfortunately, the fact is these URL endpoints are out there in the search engines like Google. How did this happen? When we made the URL endpoints of these VPN softwares, we did keep some of the text like please login, use FTM push inside the VPN configuration page itself. So when we just put these strings in the Google, we'll be able to identify the organizations that are exposing their VPN endpoint, and we'll also get to know what is the complete URL path, which can be targeted later on. I'm just showing how we can do that. I'm opening up the google.com and typing the same string that we saw in that particular script some time back. These are some of the unknown vulnerabilities for organizations as well. It is because we forget to patch. At times we think, why should I patch all the times? My VPN software has never got hacked and it is not hackable. But the fact is, when we miss out patches like these, it is very much possible the automated scripts that are running around the internet may identify you through a Google search at times or some other mechanisms and later take them over. So what we have done here, we have identified an organization's endpoint, but we didn't confirm that. We saw a set of endpoints rather, and we showed you that and came back, and I'm going to attack another setup that I have created in my laptop. We have two virtual machines as part of the demo. In one virtual machine, we have the particular vendor's VPN server running. In another machine, we have Kali Linux operating system running. We are going to execute one of the Python script from the Kali Linux, which will actually add one user and password at the VPN client. So I would like to state one point out here. This particular vulnerability is specific to this particular vendor. At the same time, this mechanism or method is not common, it's not specific to the vendor. These are the methods of attacks that are happening. These kinds of vulnerabilities are present with most of the well-known VPN vendors today, and most of them are already been disclosed publicly. So what I'm showing here is no more a secret. These scripts are available out in public. So let's execute them and see the impact. When the script is executed, we'll be adding a user named guest and with the password the text here. So here the URL would be https host and port number remote login check, and like I said, this path can be identified by a search engine as well, because that is how the URL has been constructed by the VPN vendor. Let's try executing it, making use of Python 3. We can set any password here. So I'm adding a user called guest and with the password ABCD to the VPN without even letting the VPN administrator know about it. And after that, I'm going to log in or basically add my device into the network, consume the same username and password. Yes, I've logged in, and at this point, I can download the client and start off with the agent and connect to the network without anybody getting to know that I'm part of them. And later, once you're inside a network, we can start spreading. Oh, I talked about spreading. Let's see how to do that, right? There are multiple ways. In fact, so many ways in which we can spread from one device to another device when it comes to a hacker's route. Let's look at most difficult ones, RDP and SSH. I'll show you how to exploit the RDP service of a Windows machine and take over a Windows machine completely as an administrator. Here, I have a Windows 7 professional machine where we have configured remote access. So we can execute MSTSC, remote RDP connection to the Windows machine, and make sure that this device is getting connected well. Yes, I am able to establish a RDP connectivity to the VM from my desktop. Now this is going to be our target. Let's see how can we take over this particular machine. I am going to execute a set of commands from a Kali Linux machine sitting in the same network, after which I'll be taking over the whole Windows machine without even the Windows machine user getting to know about my presence in the box. Let's try to ping the machine to realize whether the machine is present there or not. Yeah, there are ways in which we can stop the ping, because of which we are not able to find the IP or we are not able to reach the IP using ping command. But will a hacker stop there? No. there are many tools that we can consume, such as Nmap, in order to identify the presence of machines. These tools can search a group of IPs or subnets and networks at once and identify the machine that are live and listening for various services and their port number and their versions. In this case, we have identified that the particular machine has MSWBT server, which is nothing but RDP server, listening at the port number 3389. Now let's look at some of the well-known vulnerabilities of RDP. There are many out there. We are going to consume one of the vulnerability called BlueKeep. So this vulnerability helps us to exploit one of the bug that is present in an RDP machine and later take over the whole Windows machine as an administrator, because these programs like RDP have started off by a Windows administrator. When we are able to sneak into the code of the RDP protocol and take them over and get a shell, obviously we'll be getting the privilege of the user who started the particular service. Here it is the administrator. I have configured BlueKeep RCE suite inside the Kali Linux, consuming the MSF framework out there. This is a Ruby based framework which has most of the well-known vulnerabilities already built in. They have coded it, and scripts are available. You can just enter the IP address, password and shoot. That's exactly what we are going to do. I have given the local host IP address. I am going to set the remote host IP address. All that we need is the IP address and port number, nothing else. I have to set the target as Windows 7 because there are multiple operating system versions that are vulnerable for this particular exploit. I have to say which is the OS version, which is the kind of box that I am attacking. Here it is a virtual machine. So here it is a virtual machine. So I will end up making use of the set target 2. Let's move on and run this exploit. In the process, we'll be sending a payload to the Windows machine, and this payload is nothing but a program that will be executed at the RDP service level at privilege, and this program will also tell the system that to open up a command shell prompt and share that connectivity over to the port number 4444 as shown on the screen here. The connectivity reaches here. The framework, the MSF framework, takes care of channeling that to a particular shell called Metaprota. We have got a Metaprota shell to the Windows machine. It is an admin level privilege shell. We can execute the command shell and get into a Windows shell as well. Later, you are an administrator of the box. You can add a user, you can add a program, you can do anything pretty much that is possible over a DOS shell. I am just traversing across the directories, looking at who are the users in the machine. Here it is me, but being a hacker, when he take over, he can traverse through the machine to understand who are the users, what are the machine used for, and many other sort of information out there. Let's see whether we can download a file from this particular machine or upload a file to the machine. I'll do both here. On the user desktop, we can see that there is an antivirus installation file. Let's download that particular file, let us modify it and keep them back. Maybe you can have your own program out there too. In order to download these files, Metaprota shell has a feature called download, but you have to provide the exact path from C drive until the end. So once you provide that, we can make sure any file from the remote machine is downloaded here, which we can modify and later send back to the same location. So one point note here is all these operations are not known to the Windows user. We have got the admin shell, we have downloaded the file, we have modified it and kept it back. The user is not aware of it. That is the operation that is happening in the screen right now. So this is about taking over a Windows machine. Now let's look at the scenario of the Linux world. In Linux world also there are so many vulnerabilities, as it is also made up of software pieces, right? So one of the most strong protocol, well-known protocol out there is SSH, and SSH is able to stand against the hackers for most of the time. Let me show you one of the way in which we can exploit the SSH service and take over a Linux machine. Here on the right side, I have a Linux machine which is having a SSH server, and the machine is listening for the connectivity out there. On the left side, I have a Kali Linux box from which I'll be exploiting the Linux machine. Or in other words, I'll be exploiting the SSH service made available by the Linux machine. I'm just looking at the IP address. On the right side, we have 43.214, and on the left side, we have Kali Linux machine from which we are going to figure out the details of the target. Here, we are able to consume the netcat command and identify what is the particular SSH version that is being used by the remote machine. We are not only identifying SSH is running there, we are also identifying the version of the SSH service. We can look for the non-vulnerabilities that are available for the particular libSSH, and we can easily find one because this information is publicly available. All these exploits and hacks that I am showing you today should be done on our own machines, on our own laptop. If you are attempting these scenarios on another person's devices or your own organization's devices, please make sure you have the legitimate permission to do so. Otherwise, it's going to be a completely illegal operation. So this is a warning. Please make sure you have the legitimate permission to do when you attempt these scenarios in your machines. So on the left side, we have a Kali Linux machine on which we are going to have a Python script which will know how to exploit the SSH service running in the server, running in the remote server. So what we're going to do here is that we are going to exploit the Paramigo program of the SSH. The Paramigo actually helps to take care of authentication, the user auth, when it comes to SSH connectivity. Here we are sending a remote program to the remote IP address of the machine and tell the module that this is already an authenticated user, you can go ahead and execute. How is it possible? Because Paramigo module has a well-known bug which we are consuming today. When this particular request reaches there, the Paramigo module will look for the user and the authentication, and it gets a feeling that this is already an authenticated request and I can go ahead and execute the command. Anything that is being sent to the sys will be executed out here. I am executing the command who am I to begin with, and I got a response root. In other words, we have executed this command at the remote machine as the user root. The same method can be consumed in order to execute any of the commands and later get the responses as a root of the machine. This include again adding new users and complete takeover as well. So we saw the various ways in which we can hack a VPN network, and after that how to spread across multiple devices. These demos would have given you a feeling that none of these systems are actually safe and secure. But all these issues that I have showcased have patches, and most of us have patched them, though there are exceptions even today, including the big enterprise companies. The fact I would like to highlight here is there are so many vulnerabilities that are not known to the world or not known to the OEMs, right? Because of which a certain privileged users are able to get into the VPN networks, are able to get into the various Android and other devices and later take over the device itself or sneak in and take over the data as per their need. This is some of the popular VPN breaches that have happened in 2020. Many are happened in 2021 as well. How much are you ready? Let's take the case of Honda. Honda got attacked in 2010. Honda was prepared. They had the IT practices in place. They had backup of the data. The patch management was taken care, like they had a periodic patches happening on most of the devices, applications and software. But yet on June 9, 2020, Honda had to shut down the global operations, including the digitized assembly line. What happened? Because their machines got hacked and they were not really aware how fast the malware is spreading in the organization. They had to shut the whole operation. Let's take a case study today, right? If Windows 10 exposes a vulnerability today and tell that this need to be patched, otherwise your devices will be taken over, how well are you prepared? Are you sure you can put these patches across all the devices that you own, all the Windows 10 devices that you own as an organization? This is something that we should be ready to face with. What we have covered so far, we saw the real picture of the secure posture of many of the traditional infrastructures. We also saw how easy it is to hack into a VPN network or take over any of the Windows or Linux boxes. It's very easy to learn, easy to find, and easy to sell, because of which we all should be very careful while exposing our IT asset over to the internet. I would like to take you through a few lines out here. Hackers can't attack what they can't see, and insiders can't steal what they can't see. In other words, a hacker can steal data only if they have the visibility of the endpoint, only if they are able to see the assets that they need to take over. Zero Trust has made sure that only a tunneled least privilege access is being given to a user. Let me take you through Zero Trust and how Zero Trust has made a difference out here. Zero Trust made sure that each user is being given a least privilege access, and the whole data traffic and access management is handled via a highly secure tunnel, because of which other users are not able to even realize the presence of the IT infrastructure as well as the connectivity that has been established. It also calls for device validation, access segmentation, and it ensures that every user is validated, every device is verified before the access is being established. Zero Trust believes no endpoints can be trusted. It also makes sure that every user access is being taken through a particular defined policy, and the user is a specific location or a specific device in a specific time at a specific time, and all these specific attributes can be defined in a single dashboard in the management system. STP or the Zero Trust can act as a DDoS defense mechanism. Okay, I use the word STP. STP is a software defined perimeter architecture put forward by CSA, and they call for SDP architecture to be implemented for Zero Trust environment in order to make sure that there is a complete protection available for the access management system. And InstaSafe Zero Trust mechanism is completely based on SDP architecture. The best way to protect a organization's asset is to make sure nobody else can see it. So it is actually making sure that DOS attacks and DDoS attacks, distributed denial of service attacks, are not happening against an organization by hiding the endpoints away. Because to establish a DDoS attack, we need to have multiple devices establishing a connectivity to the user or the infrastructure endpoints. Let's look at how Zero Trust protection cover or give the coverage of protection for any asset or the threat lifecycle. In a cyber threat lifecycle, for a hacker to get into an organization, there are multiple stages or multiple activities that you usually perform. The initial one is the recognition, where we have to do the enumeration of the data and identify the weakest entry point of organization. And at times it could be a printer, or it could be an email, or it could be any mechanism in which a VPN or other devices are exposed over to the internet. Once you understand an endpoint that is exposed to internet, the next idea would be to identify which tool can be consumed, what could be my malicious payload, and third step would be the delivery of it. So Zero Trust makes sure your endpoints are completely hidden away from the internet, and even if they identify a weapon or a tool, they are not able to deliver to you, because the access to the infrastructure is given only to the non-users, and that too it is an encrypted tunnel to which the user is being contained. Let's go deep into InstaSafe Zero Trust model. InstaSafe Zero Trust model has been recognized by Gartner continuously for the last 3 years, and we have been the only privileged APAC company which has been listed by Gartner as a Zero Trust vendor. As per the Zero Trust architecture, every asset that belongs to a company, including applications and servers, are hidden behind an STP gateway. STP gateway act as an entry point for any of the access requests that is coming in from the external users out here. For a user to establish connectivity with the application, he has to have STP client installed in the device, and the STP client has to authenticate itself with the STP controller, after which STP controller establishes the tunnel, the secure tunnel between the STP client and STP gateway, making use of a single packet authorization technique. One more feature I would like to highlight with STP gateway here is that STP gateway is configured as a dropout firewall, because of which even if a user make use of tools like Nmap and try to probe the endpoint and make sure whether any port is there at the closed status or in filtered status, even that is not possible, because all the requests, all the packets that are coming in to the gateway are dropped off because of which an external user cannot identify the presence of HTTP gateway. Instead of ZTNA calls for controlled visibility and seamless data traffic. It is a secure access enabler for machines and humans. We can make sure that only the right devices are getting the connectivity established, and we are also making sure these devices are validated and with respect to various attributes that has been defined by us. Attackers' enumeration will miss it because they are not able to identify the presence of the infrastructure, and that way we are reducing the attack surface of an organization. Thank you for your time.